"Excuse me, what are you doing here? The welfare office is 3 blocks away." The sound did not just echo, it hit the high ceiling of the Heritage Trust Bank lobby, bounced off the gleaming marble floor, and bored into the ears of everyone present. The speaker was Eric Dawson, a 34-year-old bank teller with neatly gelled hair and a tie knotted as tightly as a noose of counterfeit authority. Standing before him, Camille Johnson, in a perfectly tailored navy blue suit, her expression controlled but not hiding the flash of shock, froze for a beat. The atmosphere shifted. Keyboard clicks went silent. The entire bank lobby seemed to be pulled taut by an invisible wire. Eric smiled, but it was not friendly. He deliberately raised his voice so everyone could hear. "This is a private banking institution, not a corner check cashing spot. Do you know what people like you usually come here for? To withdraw money with fake checks or some cheap scam?" His words were needles pricking at Camille's dignity. He gestured toward the revolving glass door, his voice smooth yet cutting. "There's an ATM outside if you've got an EBT card." Have you ever felt like your own money wasn't welcome just because of how you look? Phones began to rise. The clicks of cameras mingled with the pounding hearts of onlookers. The digital clock on the wall read 12:30 p.m. A polished brass plaque near the entrance announced, "Board of Directors meeting, 1:15 p.m. The bank would close for lunch at 2 o'clock. Behind Camille, a young woman with curly hair and a camera backpack, Naomi Carter, 29, subtly angled her phone and started a live stream. On her screen, the caption appeared, "Banking discrimination happening now. Heritage Trust Bank, downtown." Camille placed a withdrawal slip on the counter, her voice calm but each word sharp as a blade. "I want to withdraw $25,000 from my account." Eric laughed, a harsh, mocking sound. 25,000. Lady, that's more than most people shall see in a year. What kind of stunt are you trying to pull? He snatched the slip from her, crumpling the corner as if it were a worthless scrap of paper. "Let me guess. You're going to say you're a business owner or a CEO, right?" "Everyone says that." People in the lobby who had been ready to leave now stopped in their tracks. A white woman whispered, "Someone should call security." An elderly black man shook his head in dismay, but stayed silent. From the adjacent glass office, Linda Perez, 46, the branch supervisor, emerged. Her high heels struck the marble with deliberate, confident beats, her gaze scanning the scene like someone well-versed in handling trouble, but her body leaned ever so slightly toward her employee's side. "What's going on here, Eric?" Linda asked, her voice neutral, but her stance already siding with him. Eric seized the moment. "This person wants to withdraw a large amount. $25,000, claims to have an account here. Pretty unusual." Linda raised her brows, feigning surprise. "That is unusual. Ma'am, do you have valid identification? And will need to verify your employment before releasing such a large sum." Camille reached into her handbag and produced her driver's license, along with a platinum bank card that gleamed under the crystal chandelier. The card bore the Heritage Trust logo, and her name embossed in raised letters. Eric glanced at it as if it were a grocery store loyalty card. Anyone can make a fake ID these days. These fake cards even have the logo printed just like the real ones. Look, identical to the real thing. He held the card up like evidence before a jury. Naomi's live stream viewer count jumped. 847, 1,200. Comments poured in. Outrageous! Does anyone know the address of this bank? Call the media now. I have been a customer here for 6 years. Camille's voice remained steady, though in her chest each heartbeat landed like a hammer. My account number is printed right on the card and on my identification. Linda stepped closer, positioning herself next to Eric like a second wall. We have strict procedures for large transactions, especially for certain types of accounts. These procedures are meant to protect both the bank and the customer. The phrase, certain types of accounts, hung in the air like toxic smoke. Naomi's camera caught the silent, knowing exchange of looks between Linda and Eric, an unspoken alliance. From the back room, a security guard emerged. James Walker, 39, with a decade of experience. His eyes flicked to Camille, full of hesitation. He knew exactly what was going on, but the uniform and name tag on his chest were shackles, binding him to the right side, as ordered from above. James, we might need you to assist with this one. Possible fraud, Linda said, loudly enough for the whole lobby to hear. The phone in Camille's bag vibrated, a call reminding her of a scheduled conference with the Federal Reserve at 2 p.m. She silenced it, her eyes never leaving Eric's. Eric leaned back in his chair, twirling a pen, as if this were just another dull performance he put on every day. Listen, lady. I see this all the time. Fake documents, sob stories, trying to grab quick cash, not happening. He gestured across the opulent space of the bank. This is Heritage Trust Bank. We serve serious customers with serious money. A businessman behind Naomi muttered, if she has the paperwork, just give her the money. But a middle-aged woman nearby nodded in agreement with Eric. Linda opened a thick file folder. We'll need to verify your employment, the source of the funds, and the specific purpose for using them. Inside Camille's leather briefcase were board meeting documents and contracts that could reshape the banking industry. But to the people in front of her, she was nothing more than a black woman who needed to be controlled. Eric leaned toward his computer screen, lying smoothly. The system is flagging unusual activity. Multiple red alerts. We have to investigate further. Naomi glanced at her phone. 1,847 viewers. The hashtag #banking while black was spreading on its own. Photos of Eric's smug face were already appearing on Twitter and Instagram. Board meeting in 45 minutes, the overhead announcement chimed. Linda checked her watch, her impatience clear. But instead of relenting, she pointed toward the waiting area near the guard station. Please have a seat. This process will take quite some time. The lobby fell into complete silence. The guard stood there, still unsure. The live stream hit 2,000 viewers, with comments flooding in. They're trying to humiliate her. This is blatant discrimination. What no one knew was that in less than an hour, everything would turn upside down in a way no one could have imagined. The PA system crackled again, the female voice steady, yet pouring fuel on the fire. Board meeting in 30 minutes. All department heads, prepare to enter the conference room. Naomi glanced at her phone. 3,400 people were watching live. On her screen, the comments scrolled faster than she could read. Someone called the press. I've been through the exact same thing. Send this link to Sun. The executive elevator doors slid open with a sharp ding. Out stepped Michael Lee, 50 years old, grey suit, red tie, every stride deliberate. His rank was etched into every detail. The Patek Philippe watch, the gold-plated name badge. He was the regional director, the man the bank called when it wanted to put out a fire fast. "What's going on here?" His voice wasn't loud, but it was enough to make everyone hold their breath. Eric straightened instantly, like a soldier spotting his commanding officer. "Suspected fraud case. Attempted withdrawal of $25,000. Questionable documents. Multiple red flags in the system." Michael leaned in, giving Camille the kind of look one reserves for reading a criminal record. "Ma'am, I'm Michael Lee, Regional Director of Heritage Trust. I understand there's been a bit of confusion regarding our verification process." Camille held his gaze, calm. "There is no confusion, Mr. Lee. I am simply withdrawing money from my account." Michael gave a seasoned smile, the kind that carried an unspoken edge. "Scams today are far more sophisticated. Identity theft, forged documents, social engineering. We have to be vigilant." Naomi's camera caught the moment James Walker, the security guard, frowned slightly. In that silence, his eyes said it all. He knew this wasn't about security procedures. This was about something else. Something he had seen far too many times over the years. "Perhaps we should move this into a private room," James suggested softly, hoping to diffuse the tension. Michael shook his head, his eyes cold as steel. "No, transparency is an important principle in fraud investigations. Other customers should see how seriously we take security." The livestream comments erupted. "Transparency? This is public shaming. They're staging a show." An elderly woman approached the counter, frowning. "I need to make a deposit before the bank closes for lunch." Eric gave her a dismissive smile. "Sorry, ma'am. We're handling a security incident. This person is attempting to withdraw a large sum with questionable documents." The woman glanced at Camille, her eyes carrying suspicion that had been planted long before. Across the room, a young black man stepped out from the loan department, his voice sharp with frustration. "This is ridiculous. She has ID and a bank card. What more do you need?" Linda cut in quickly. "Sir, please do not interfere with the bank's security process. We have our reasons." The bank lobby seemed split in two, one side nodding in agreement, the other seething with anger. Naomi's camera swept across faces, capturing the divide. This was no longer a transaction. It was a public trial. Michael pulled out a thick stack of forms. "I need further verification. Employment contract, tax returns, source of income, and a signed statement of intended use of funds." Camille's phone vibrated again. Messages from her assistant, her lawyer, even members of the board, all aware of the live stream. She ignored them, betraying not a flicker of urgency. The PA system sounded again. "Board meeting in 20 minutes. Prepare your documents." Linda was starting to show impatience but stuck to the script. "We'll also need to contact your company to confirm your employment." Michael narrowed his eyes. "And what company is that?" Camille gave a slight smile, the kind that if noticed closely hinted at something more. "I'm self-employed." Eric laughed with open contempt. "Self-employed? Let me guess. Another so-called entrepreneur with empty paperwork." Naomi glanced at her phone. 7,800 viewers. The hashtag heritage discrimination was starting to trend. Major news outlets had already embedded the live stream. James stepped forward, his voice gentle. "Ma'am, I'll need your driver's license, social security card, and any documents related to your work." Camille handed over each item without protest. James accepted them, his eyes carrying an apology, he understood. But the unspoken laws of the uniform kept him trapped. Michael nodded. "James, run it through the fraud detection system immediately." In truth, it was nothing but a stalling tactic. Michael was calculating how to handle the swelling audience, both in the room and online. A group of new staff walked into the lobby, instantly caught in the tense atmosphere. A black woman in her 30s pulled out her phone, hitting record. "You're seriously harassing her just for withdrawing money." "This is 2024, not 1964. Linda shot back immediately. "We apply the same policy to all customers." But the evidence was in plain sight. White customers continued to withdraw and deposit without a hitch. Only Camille was being interrogated. Naomi's live stream now had backup recordings from multiple accounts. This story couldn't be stopped. The PA system again. "Board meeting in 15 minutes. Michael's radio crackled. "Mr. Lee, senior security wants to discuss the live stream. Possible legal exposure." Too late. The online crowd was already duplicating the footage into dozens of versions, spreading it across Facebook, Twitter, TikTok. Michael turned back to Camille. "Ma'am, this verification process could take several hours." The message underneath was clear. "Accept the humiliation, or you won't get your money." Camille didn't move. Not a breath out of place. Only James turned his face away, unable to meet her eyes. Naomi checked the time. 12,400 people were waiting to see what happened next. The comments exploded. "She's way too calm." "This woman knows something," the PA sounded again. "Board meeting in 10 minutes. All managers, report to the conference room." Camille gently placed her leather briefcase on the counter. Her hand slowly opened the clasp. The sharp click rang out loud and clear in the stillness. The crowd seemed to hold its breath. Naomi zoomed in. Inside there was no cash, no identification papers, just a business card. She placed it on the counter in front of Eric. Eric glanced at it, smirking. "Camille Johnson, President and CEO, Johnson Capital Group. Fake business cards are everywhere." Michael stepped forward, taking the card. He was ready to deliver a dismissive remark, but his expression began to change. The weight of the cardstock, the font, the logo, all matched what he had seen in high-level shareholder meetings. Camille produced another card, this one bearing the Heritage Trust Bank logo and a small line of text. "Board member, Series A. Preferred shareholder, voting rights." Michael's face shifted, as if he had just seen a balance sheet bleeding billions. He looked up, his voice dropping low. "You? You're on the board of directors?" Camille's eyes locked on his, her words cutting like ice. "I don't just sit on the board, Mr. Lee. Johnson Capital Group owns 31% of Heritage Trust Corporation. I am the largest shareholder of this bank." The lobby erupted. Gasps, phones buzzing non-stop, live stream comments exploding. "Plot twist! Oh my God, she owns the bank!" James's eyes widened, remembering her face from the internal news bulletin. Linda stepped back as if from a flame. Eric stood frozen, the business card slipping from his fingers, sliding across the cold stone counter. Camille continued, her tone that of a financial tribunal. 8 months ago, We took controlling interest. The board meeting today, she gestured toward the conference room, is my quarterly report. No one in the lobby dared even to blink. The lobby of Heritage Trust Bank sank into a thick, heavy silence, the kind not born from the absence of sound, but from every noise being swallowed by shock. Camille stood tall, the light from the crystal chandelier washing over her navy-tailored suit, making every hand-crafted seam gleam like a suit of armor. She opened her leather briefcase and pulled out a thick file encased in a hard black cover. The word confidential. Board review embossed across it. Today's visit, Camille said slowly, each word pressing weight into the air, is part of my customer service audit program. Anonymous visits to every branch. She lifted her gaze, sweeping it over Eric, Linda, then Michael. And you have just provided me with perfect data on frontline discriminatory behavior. Naomi, standing behind, could feel the electric charge in the air. Her camera caught every bead of sweat on Eric's temple, every dry swallow from Linda, and the way Michael's knuckles whitened as he gripped the file in his hands. Camille turned a page, revealing tables covered in numbers. In the past 6 months, 47 complaints of discrimination have been filed into the system. 78% of them involve customers of color. And, coincidentally, her eyes locked on Michael, 63% occurred at branches under your direct management. Michael froze, but Camille wasn't finished. My shareholder rights are not symbolic. With 31% ownership, Johnson Capital Group can propose senior leadership changes and call an emergency meeting with the full board at any time. The murmur of whispers rippled through the lobby like small waves. Customers, who moments ago were merely curious, now realized they were witnessing a live corporate power shift. Camille pulled out her phone, the screen lighting up with a contact list. FDIC, Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, House Financial Services Committee. A copy of this live stream, she said, has already been sent to every federal regulator. Senator Elizabeth Warren has also received it. Eric swallowed hard, unable to meet her eyes for the first time. The anti-fraud talking points drilled into him suddenly felt hollow. Camille stepped forward, her voice taking on the precision of legal argument. Under the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, every instance of denying or delaying service based on race can carry penalties of up to $500,000. Add to that violations of the Community Reinvestment Act, which requires banks to serve all segments of the community fairly. She signed a sheet on top of the file, the motion swift and decisive. You have just violated both statutes, directly, with evidence, and in full public view. Linda opened her mouth to speak, but Camille cut her off. Don't say we were just following procedure. I have withdrawn larger sums at this very branch without a single question. The only difference today is the color of my skin. The air in the room thickened. Naomi's camera caught subtle nods of agreement from several customers. Camille went on. And here is the ultimatum. Heritage Trust has 24 hours to terminate immediately the individuals directly involved in this incident, suspend and investigate all management who approved this discriminatory process, launch bias awareness training for all customer-facing staff, 40 hours initial certification with annual recertification. Implement a real-time AI transaction monitoring system to flag potential bias. Establish a $25 million fund to support minority-owned businesses and community financial education programs. The tapping of keyboards and the ringing of phones in the lobby seemed to stop altogether. Even James, still standing near the counter, looked up in disbelief. Michael spoke, his voice unsteady, but trying to sound composed. "Mrs. Johnson, I believe we can resolve this internally," Camille interrupted, this time with open irony. "Internally? This is far beyond internal. In the last 40 minutes, the hashtag #heritage discrimination has reached over 1.5 million mentions. The bank's stock price has already dropped 4.2% in after-hours trading. That's a $340 million market value loss. And the market waits for no one." Naomi's camera caught Linda gripping the counter for balance, Eric standing frozen, and Michael struggling to swallow the truth he'd just heard. Camille closed the file, her voice lowering but every word carved deep. "You think today is about me withdrawing money. It's not. This is about power, who truly holds it, and who abuses it." The crowd around them began to murmur with approval. A few hands clapped, then the entire lobby filled with applause, growing into a steady, drum-like rhythm. Camille checked her watch. 1:07 p.m. She gave a thin smile. 3 minutes until the board meeting starts. We'll continue. In there. She turned, took her briefcase, and walked across the marble floor with the poise of someone who had just redefined the order of power in this room. Naomi followed, still filming, as the sound of applause and the hum of online commentary blended into a living, resonant echo through the stone hall. Eric, Linda, and Michael remained where they stood, like forgotten statues, as the woman they had once labeled a suspicious customer strode toward the conference room, holding the keys to every door of authority. The thick glass door of the 10th floor boardroom closed behind Camille with a sharp, decisive click. Inside, a nearly 8-meter walnut conference table stretched out like a runway, lined with laptops, neatly stacked files, and bottles of purified water. Light from the large windows behind the board members streamed in, casting stark highlights on the tense expressions of each face. The wall clock read 10 p.m., precisely the scheduled start time. At the head of the table stood Richard Vaughan, 63, chairman and CEO of Heritage Trust Bank, his hands braced against the tabletop. He had already heard about the incident through a flood of urgent texts from his assistant, but no report had prepared him for the sight of Camille Johnson walking in as if this were her stage. Richard forced his voice to remain steady. "Mrs. Johnson, I was informed there has been an incident in the lobby." Camille set her leather briefcase on the table, opened it, and began placing her documents in order. The customer service audit report, the discrimination complaints file, and the shareholder ultimatum. "I wouldn't call it an incident, Mr. Vaughan," she replied evenly. "I'd call it a perfect case study of the systemic problem we've ignored for far too long." The room fell silent. Only the faint hum of the air conditioning remained, like the quickened breath of someone trying to keep calm. Camille lifted her gaze, sweeping it over the faces of the chief legal officer, the HR director, the marketing director, and others she knew well from quarterly reports. In the last 40 minutes, discriminatory behavior has been recorded live and broadcast to tens of thousands of people. As of now, She placed her phone on the table, its screen showing 67,000 live viewers. That number is still climbing. A board member cleared their throat. We could issue a public apology and try to limit the media fallout. Camille turned to them with a thin smile, her next words sharp as a blade. Limit it? In 25 years in finance, I've never seen the market limit anything when trust is lost. The share price has already dropped 4.2% after hours, equivalent to $340 million in market value. If the ESG funds divest in unison, that number will multiply by 10. Richard swallowed and took his seat. What do you want, Camille? The question hung in the air like bait cast onto still water, and Camille pulled the line tight. She rose, walking toward the large screen at the end of the room. A slide appeared, titled, Mandatory Restructuring Demands. 24 hours. Point 1. Immediate termination of Eric Dawson and Linda Perez for violations of anti-discrimination laws, with full supporting evidence. Point 2. Suspension and comprehensive investigation of Michael Lee for enabling systemic misconduct. 63% of all discrimination complaints occurred at branches under his direct supervision. Point 3. Mandatory bias recognition training, 40 hours for all frontline employees, with annual recertification. Projected cost, $12 million. Point 4. Deployment of AI transaction monitoring, analyzing language and behavior in real time to alert management. Development cost, $45 million, with $8 million annually to maintain. Point 5. Creation of a $25 million community investment fund to support minority-owned businesses and provide financial education for underserved communities. Richard leaned back in his chair, tapping the table lightly as though doing mental calculations. Camille, this is an enormous expenditure. Other shareholders will demand a justification. Camille turned, locking eyes with him. A justification? How about this? Losing the bank's largest shareholder, losing every ESG investment group, losing credibility with federal regulators, and finally, losing your banking license for systemic violations of the Equal Credit Opportunity Act. Another director interjected. Perhaps we could negotiate a lower figure. Camille cut them off, her tone dropping, but weighted like lead. No, this is the bare minimum. And I am not negotiating. You have 24 hours to sign, or Johnson Capital Group divests immediately $1.2 billion and announces the reason publicly to the entire market. No one said another word. The only sound was Camille's pen tapping softly against the file, like a countdown. The door opened, and James Walker stepped in, not in a security uniform, but in a perfectly tailored suit with a new nameplate reading, Director of Compliance and Customer Advocacy. He placed a file on the table. Complete evidence from the live stream and security cameras. Implementing Mrs. Johnson's reform package immediately is the only viable path to reducing legal exposure. The room felt cornered. Richard exhaled slowly, looked around at each board member, and nodded. Vote. Hands went up, one by one. Not a single vote against. Camille closed the file and slid it back into her briefcase. Good. Tomorrow we begin. I will inform the market and the regulators of this reform plan. She turned and walked out, leaving behind a boardroom freshly reminded that true power does not lie in the seat you occupy, but in the ability to make an entire system move. The news broke like a magnitude 9 earthquake, shaking not only Heritage Trust Bank, but the entire financial industry. That afternoon, the official press release was sent to the entire media network and regulatory agencies. Heritage Trust Bank accepts the full reform demands from its largest shareholder, Johnson Capital Group, including the termination and investigation of those involved, the implementation of mandatory training, the deployment of AI bias monitoring, and the establishment of a $25 million community investment fund. The headline on the front page of the Financial Times the next morning read, "One customer, one camera, one banking empire brought to its knees." 1 week later, the purge began. Eric Dawson received his termination notice. His personnel file revealed 34 unresolved complaints, a number enough to make any legal counsel shudder. Linda Perez left the building under the flash of reporters' cameras, her employee badge confiscated at the gate. Michael Lee, the man who had once scoffed when Camille said she was the largest shareholder, resigned before the board could vote to remove him. Every news broadcast replayed the moment their faces shifted from arrogance to stunned defeat, images that became the symbol of the price paid when power is abused. AI entered the game. Within 60 days, an AI system to monitor customer interactions was installed in all 340 branches. The software, funded by Johnson Capital Group, analyzed voice tone, keywords, and levels of tension in conversations. Whenever it detected signs of bias, for example, a lowered tone when speaking to a customer of color, or unreasonable requests for additional documents, the system sent an alert to the branch manager within 5 seconds. In the first month, 172 alerts were recorded, 89% of which led to immediate behavioral adjustments. The Community Investment Fund, turning commitment into action. The initial $25 million was quickly allocated to projects, $12 million to fund 147 minority-owned startups, $8 million to launch free financial literacy programs in 53 low-income communities, and $5 million to a revolving loan fund offering preferential interest rates of just 1.2%. In just 6 months, the fund had helped create more than 2,300 new jobs. Market impact. What no one expected, instead of falling further, Heritage Trust's share price fully recovered within 4 months and set a new record. ESG funds that had hesitated now poured in more capital. Bloomberg reported, Camille Johnson turned a PR crisis into an opportunity to reposition the brand, attracting long-term capital based on genuine reform commitments. The financial industry was shaken. It wasn't just Heritage Trust that changed. 4 other major banks, once direct competitors, voluntarily announced reform plans similar to the Johnson Standard to avoid facing the same situation. The National Banking Association adopted new rules requiring mandatory bias training across the entire sector. A Harvard Business Review survey found that discrimination complaints in banking dropped 52% after 1 year, while lending to minority-owned businesses increased by 34% industry-wide. Naomi Carter, from freelance journalist to transparency icon. Naomi's livestream video reached more than 3.2 million views within 48 hours, becoming study material in law, economics, and media courses. She was invited by Heritage Trust to serve as Director of Transparency Communications, overseeing public reporting of all customer service data. Naomi told CNN in an interview, "I only hit live because I saw something unfair. I never expected it to become one of the most policy-changing moments in banking history." James Walker, from security guard to leadership. James became Director of Compliance and Customer Advocacy, overseeing the entire AI system and complaint resolution process. His speech at the National Banking Conference became a phenomenon. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is not look away. Camille Johnson, her legacy crossing borders. 1 year later, Camille stood on the stage of the Global Banking Equality Conference, speaking before representatives from 47 countries. Dignity isn't negotiable in financial services. She wasn't just talking about heritage trust, but about a new standard that had spread to insurance, retail, and even healthcare, industries where Johnson Capital Group was now investing. The Johnson Equality Fund had disbursed $27 million to minority-owned businesses, creating 8,400 jobs and hundreds of success stories in communities across the nation. Epilogue: The Power of Readiness. Eric Dawson, after a 6-month bias training program, now works at a small credit union. In his talks, he always begins with, "I was once the textbook example of unconscious bias, and I paid the price." The final image in Naomi's documentary, Owning Justice, is of Camille walking out of the Heritage Trust boardroom, the glass door closing behind her, her footsteps echoing against the marble floor. Camille's voice plays over the scene. When discrimination becomes expensive, business will change. And when business changes, the entire system changes. That line is now quoted in business management books, in law school lectures, and in global transparency campaigns. Heritage Trust Bank has learned that serving every customer with respect is not just a matter of ethics, it is a matter of survival. In any industry, real power does not lie in the logo printed on letterhead or the title on a business card. It lies in the ability to turn the right values into non-negotiable standards, so that no one is ever disrespected simply because they look different from you. Camille Johnson did more than change the way a bank operates. She rewrote the definition of standard service, from the most luxurious teller counters to the smallest branches, and proved that when discrimination becomes an enormous cost, business will change faster than any law ever could. In business, you can buy a building, a brand, even an entire advertising campaign. But you cannot buy respect. That only comes when leaders are willing to step down to the front lines, to look directly at how people are treated when no one thinks they are being watched. If you believe dignity must come before profit, then like this video, subscribe to follow the next Dignity Check, and comment below with the words, "Keep dignity." Because sometimes change begins with a single sentence, and sometimes with an unflinching look.